Yeah.
George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. We got an old friend on the program today, Umoja Vaughn, just wrote a book. It's called What Was I Thinking? And she's here today to talk about her journey. So let's what I found fascinating in reading your story, Umoja, is that I knew of your work around community organizing. In fact, that's how we met in Syracuse. You were working at Peace on the west side, right on Castle Street. And, I came to a couple of your programs. So I knew of your work as an activist, doing work with the getting people to go to the prisons and all of that kind of work with women who had partners who were incarcerated,
Yes.
all of that. So that's what I knew that piece of you, but all the rest of it, I had no idea. So what was your motivation for this book, which, talks about some very dark periods. It talks about addiction, it talks about abuse, domestic violence, and all of those things. What was I thinking? What was the motivation for you to put all of that down for the readers?
Well, thank you, George, for doing this with me. It's been an ongoing, I want to say struggle, but I'm learning how to change my words. Ongoing victory trying to do what I think I'm sent here to do. My book, What Was I Thinking, came about just having conversations with my grandson, and we talk regularly, and he's very prominent on the media pages and stuff. And based on my talking with him and telling the story of various things that I went through, he says, Mimi, that's what he calls me, why don't you write a book? And I said, yeah, no, I don't know. Well, maybe one day. And I am, as a writer, I like writing. I always take notes and put things down. And as we continue to talk, I'm like, why not? You could do that. That's something I want to do. And I like writing. And so we decided, he says, well, if you do it, I'll help you. And that's where it started. He encouraged me to put the stories I had been telling him on paper. And we got busy. He was my first all the way through, helping with the outline, pulling the information out of me, and also, encouraging me, even though there's some things I was saying that I was like worried about whether I want to share that with him. But he received me and we started.
It's interesting because your grandson was your first audience, and you said you were worried about, I heard you imply that you were worried about him judging you for the choices that you made, whereas you're putting this all out for all of us. And it starts with you talking about being sexually assaulted as a teen, but not being able to tell anybody about that.
I wasn't even a teen. I was about maybe 5 or 6 years old. I don't know exactly, but I don't remember having started school yet. And then at that time, there was no Head Start where, 3 and 4 years old, you're into school. So I don't believe I had started school. So I was robbed very early. And I didn't even realize that it was going to play the major part that it would play in me as a person making choices, making decisions about intimacies and things like that. And I didn't even know that I had been injured, robbed, because I wasn't hurt or penetrated or anything. But what was taken from me, my innocence, was very, very deep and long lasting in one's life.
Right. You were exposed. There was some, you were exposed, and
that's right.
People exposed their genitals to you and did sorts of all kinds of things to you, exposed you to some things. And also there was some physical, and this is all happening in Charleston, South Carolina. And you talk about that experience. And you said that just now that it informed some of the choices that you made for the rest of your life. What were some of those choices? Do you think how that experience impacted you?
Well, actually, that type of experience usually puts puts a child in a fast moving pace,
Mm,
put them beyond their years,
mm-hmm,
beyond
mm-hmm,
the developmental area they should be studying and worrying about. They are doing and involving themselves in things beyond their age. At 14, I became pregnant, so that while I was growing up and my I can say promiscuity because now I know promiscuity, but my fastness at that young age, I didn't know why I was fast. Some people would just say, oh, she's a fast little girl. She know too much. Well, I had already been exposed to too much.
and when they say fast, what they mean, do we have to explain that to people? Do we know what
Well,
that?
I don't know. I think that in my time, my generation, that means a little girl who is doing too much. She's grown. She's acting above her age, and she, is involved in sexual things that she shouldn't be involved in for her
Mhm.
age.
Right,
And
right,
other parents who are trying to do good by their daughters, they would want to not have them play with a little girl like that.
right, right. So pregnant at 14, three children by the age of
18.
18.
Yes,
Three children.
three children. My whole entire childhood was taken from me. The
Mm-hmm.
good thing about it is that the even though the South had its um, um, catastrophe, but I grew up with some Southern principles and understanding, and my mother was quite strict, so that the way she raised me and taught me, whether I wanted to or not, became a part of me. So
Right.
that even though I was 14 and had grown to become a married woman with children at 18, I still was ready for motherhood. Because
Mm.
what my mother gave me in terms of nurturing and loving and discipline was definitely still put in, it was already there. And so that showed itself when I had to stand up and be that.
Your mother helped you raise your oldest daughter before she eventually came to live
Yes,
with you. And
yes. I left my oldest daughter, although she knew I was her mom.
right.
She knew that my mother first started out with they were going to raise her as my sister,
Mm-hmm.
but then cousins and family members, they don't hide things, and so my daughter knew I was her
Mm-hmm.
mom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so my mother was going to take her on and make her my sister, so that in her mind, and at that time, they wanted to try to keep her abated from me so that I can continue to go to school. Because
Yeah.
at that time, you couldn't go to school after you had a baby.
Right. Right.
So that was the plan. The strategy was, well, I'll be her mother and that's your sister, and so we can go forward with schooling.
And it's funny because I see your one of the things I saw in your writing is that you would take us inside just a little bit, and then you
Yes.
step back. you go in just a little bit. Just you give us a taste of what's happening. I think your fingers blocking something there, but you would give us a taste of a little bit of it, and you so many deep experiences as you were also pursuing your education, which we'll get
Oh
to
my
in just a
gosh.
moment. Yeah, right.
Yes. Well, when I look back on it after going through the experience and deciding to peel the onion back to
Right.
know more about me and understand me, because I wanted to know. I want to know who I am, not only who I am as a female and a feminine person, in terms of my Blackness. I was
Yeah.
digging deep to find out
Right.
who I was, where I came from, all of that. And there's so much more of the story that I did not delve into. I said in the book, some things it's going to be for me,
Mm-hmm.
but I wanted to put out enough of it to open myself up for my own cleansing. And once I can do that and face the truth of certain matters, learn to love myself more and understand why did I allow certain things to come into my life once I did that, I'm able to now talk about it as I can today with no guilt, no shame, no um, what I want to say, put down of myself, because I've been able to go through that whole period and erase the guilt, the shame, because I grew up thinking I was a bad girl,
Mm-hmm.
because of the reputation I was saying. If everybody think that I'm so this and I'm so that, then I didn't like that. I was not a bad girl. I was a good girl. Somebody did, like they say when we came over here, somebody did something to us. We
Mm-hmm.
weren't bad people,
Right.
but something happened. Something grabbed hold of my mind and my
Mm-hmm.
thinking and my choices way before I could understand what was happening. And it was important for me to go and deal and go, because when I went into rehab, as a matter of fact, part of being able to heal yourself, you have to go down into, you got to go into that core. And a lot of people go into rehab for healing and fixing, but they don't want to touch the real surface of what's going on. They just want to stay on the surface. You got
So
to dig deep.
you talk about rehab. You ended up being addicted to crack cocaine,
Yes.
and that took a few years off
Oh,
your
that took,
life.
oh, I thought I was never, ever going to be
Right.
myself again.
So many
But
years.
strangely, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, for many years, and so you were addicted. You were making choices. You were in some of the lowest parts of who you are to
That's
come
right.
from that. And what the reason why I bring that up is that when I'm thinking about this book we're talking with Umoja Vaughn, what was I thinking? It's the name of a book. Who you said you were writing this about you, but who is the reader you envision, and how do you think they're going to be helped by your story? What are you hoping that reader takes away from your story?
Well, primarily, I want my vulnerability,
Yeah.
my
Mm-hmm.
willingness to heal myself by removing all secrets. Not all secrets, because there's some things, like I said, I reserve. I'm not saying I may not even bring it, but at this time I reserve to hold for myself. But I wanted to, uh, there are people who have gone through molestation. And since my book has been out and people have been saying to me and talking to me, some people said I couldn't read it in public. I had to read it at home because they resonated so much with the story.
Triggers,
Some
right?
people, yes, young ladies, some people said to me, a person said to me, she had the abusiveness with her husband, but she doesn't know, and her new husband, because he's no longer with her, he doesn't even know anything about that part of her life.
Mm-hmm.
So people are holding and hiding, learn to live with, things that have happened to
Well,
them.
well,
And I'm saying, if you get Luke cut it out, you can be much more, you can reach more of a potential goal.
did you ever talk? I mean, in the book, you said that you never spoke of it. The mother of the two young boys who were involved in molesting you, they never spoke of it. Is this the first time you've talked about it?
Oh no, you know what? I finally told my mother when I was about 40,
Mm.
Mom, do you know so and so
And so and
did this
so,
to me?
right.
Yes. And I don't even know whether they're still living or whatever, but I finally admitted that to her. She knew nothing. My parents knew nothing of what had happened to me. The parents of the two guys, two were brothers, teens, they, when she discovered what was happening and what was going on, she just came to me, baby, don't let them play with you like that. Don't do that. Just,
This
try
was
to
the
get me
mother.
the mother of the boys.
Yeah.
And she tried to get me away from it and let me know that no, don't do that. It's not nice, whatever. But she never told my mother that she found out. They never, and both parents, my parents and their parents, one was living upstairs and I was living downstairs. They never let my parents knew that they knew what had happened to me. And
And
so that just went on by the wayside. So whatever that had created in me and who I became, my mother would not understand why her child is this way or that because she had no clue what I had gone through. And the other adults that knew never confided or apologized or anything. And I guess that was because of their own care for their own children.
Have you ever got counseling for that experience?
Not except to rehab, no.
No.
In my rehab situations, that's where a lot of things came out. Because when
Mhm.
you get in rehab, the idea is to speak and talk about your situations, your feelings, trying to help you figure out why you are escaping through
Mhm.
drugs or any kind of malfunction.
Mhm.
And in doing that, I opened up and cried a lot. And I was at the time, I had already made up in my mind, I'm going to do whatever I had to do to get this garbage out of me.
Right.
So I opened up and I shared a lot, you know. But here's the thing, even though you do that, there's some behaviors that becomes habitual.
Yeah.
And even though you know better and you know things, you don't still do the work you have to do to break the cycle.
When I think of that experience of you being molested as a child and not being, and the mother knowing but not saying anything to your mother, and then you telling
Yes.
your mother finally at the age of 40, one of the things that I hear coming through loudly, whether it was intentional or not in your book, is this lack of protection, that you were never protected. And it seems that that was a theme throughout the life. At the same time, you were protecting everybody else.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much for saying that, because that is exactly, I felt growing up, I was never protected. Nobody took care of me. And I was an only child, by the
Right,
way.
right, right.
I just felt that. But sort of, George, sometimes I think I was sent on an assignment because it was like an angel was always with me, because I was able to go down the deepest road, the hell road, but at the same time, I was always protected. There was from above,
From
not from
above,
on a,
right?
yes,
And
yes,
and the reason why I think that, because it's a Black woman, and we hear that, we hear the we hear that Black women um, are said to be the least protected in society, and so when I
yes,
read your book, it sort of resonates that way, that that theme is being reinforced, and like you said, yet at the same time, while you didn't feel that physically, you, there was something other, higher than you,
something else.
something else, God, if you want to, if you will, that was protecting you, even as you were thinking
Going
and
through.
making, and not, aside from the molestation, you were making some of your own choices that led you to
Yes,
be where you are. And what's interesting is that you go to great lengths not to blame other folk
that's my
for,
friend.
except for those two boys, right? But you, even
Yes.
them, you make it, you go through great lengths not to blame others for choices that you make. How important do you think that is in terms of the journey and recognizing your own accountability in your own actions?
Well, that's so very important, because as I begin to come through the storm, some of the things I begin to understand about me is that you have, first of all, I'm at a place in my journey where I understand the power of my mind, my thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
my words. And I realize that a lot of times we think that we have nothing to do with why a situation is the way it is. But a lot of times you do. You can create a reality by continually saying a certain thing all the time, or believing a certain thing. Or again, my behavior might
Mm-hmm.
have drew things to me, because I also understand that you can attract things to you based on what you're putting forth. What are you projecting into the universe? So now I'm learning that once you learn to love yourself, once you learn to understand yourself, it makes it easier for you to tolerate, understand, and accept other people. Another thing I learned as a result of all of that is that my life didn't end at any one of those stations.
Right.
So just because you go through something, just because, you're being molded, don't forget good and bad takes to make a molded person. We
And
think that only good things, but the
right.
bad things help to mold us sometimes better than the good things.
And I don't want people to think that I'm saying that the abuse in relationships and such were things that you brought on. You're a victim of that. I'm talking
Yes,
about other choices like the decision
yes,
to get into crack cocaine, the
yes,
decision to briefly try to be, a player in the game.
yes. Yeah, I
I'm
hear
not
you.
laughing at that. I'm just saying, the way you write it, I'm responding into that.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Those decisions I made in terms of using the drug, we have to also remember my decision was not to use the drug. My decision to want to be with the person I was trying to be with.
Right.
And that person was doing that. And because we are emotional and sometimes not logical, your mind and your heart should go together, but sometimes we run off with our emotions, not thinking. That's where the book comes from. What was I thinking?
Right.
I wanted to be with someone doing something that was totally out of my field, but it didn't matter because the emotions of wanting to be with someone took over. And so when you get yourself connected to people, they can take you down the wrong path if you're not strong enough to not go or to pull yourself out. And so I made some choices that looked like it was me physically or cognitively understanding the choice, but no, I was emotionally drawn. And because guess what? My self-esteem was jacked up.
So you eventually moved to Harlem. You got him. That's where your fire for black
Yes,
for black
yes,
for black African American. You call them in the book. You call them. You go between melanated people and black folk. But
yes.
you started to really learn more about who you were as an individual. You got involved with some politics. You eventually moved out to Brooklyn and got involved there.
Yes. Oh my God, Brooklyn is the place.
You went. I love when you were writing about Coney Island because I have fond memories of going there as a
Okay.
child, taking the D train. But that also ended up being the place where you sunk the lowest.
I was on a roller coaster. I lived in a roller coaster in Coney Island.
Mm.
I left the South, the deep racist South, want no parts of the South. I grew up doing the white water fountain and colored water fountain, that whole piece. Coming up north, I'm gonna, this is gonna be a whole new life, and blacks are not gonna be treated the way they were down south. So when I got to Harlem, Harlem was a mecca. Harlem, you felt black. You want to be black. You're in the midst of blackness and the music and the time period, everything. I just got taken over with being with Harlem. And it was like my kickstart to wanting to find out, who am I as a Black woman?
How concerned were you about repeating generational trauma in your own family, your own experience? How concerned were you about that?
Well, the good thing is it stopped with me.
Mm.
Neither of my daughters had a child out of wedlock, or my one daughter, 27, that's my oldest, the first one. My middle daughter, 39, and my last daughter, 43. That's when they gave birth to their children. That cycle was thrown out the door. They didn't go there. And it's because I had, like I said, I think I was anointed. I had the mommy thing going on, even though there was the baby part of me still being needed help, so I could be a mama, yet I needed a mama.
But and at the same time, your dad was I guess you would say alcoholic, but I don't know if you gave it a name. And
well, yeah, I would say alcoholic.
Uh,
At that time, they call him a drunk,
right.
you
And
know.
and he was abusive to your mother.
Right,
And
yeah. He
you know,
was, I need to sort of clarify a little bit.
yeah.
In the writing, I grew up seeing my father as a wife beater. He was technically an intimidator. I
Mm-hmm.
have never seen him hit her, but he would always have her jumping around scared,
Mm-hmm.
because once he started to drink, you know how some drunks, they come in and they raise hell, and he'd come in at 3 in the morning and she's sleeping,
Mm-hmm.
and he would want her to get up in the middle of the night and make him something to eat when
Mm-hmm.
food was already made, but he just want to get her up and make her get in the kitchen and
Mm-hmm.
do whatever it is. That his aggressiveness. And when she nodded out or fell asleep, he, like I said in the book, he had lots of tools. He's a carpenter, all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of wood and crowbars and hammers and all these things. And when he would pick something up as if he was going to hit her, then as a child, I'm like, no, because I didn't know if he was going to or not, but I knew his tone, his, the
They
intimidation that was in
so
the house.
so for people that don't know what that is, that's called psychological emotional abuse,
Absolutely.
right? And that is just as
Absolutely.
damaging as physical abuse. It can be just as damaging because you're walking around scared all the time.
All the time,
And,
emotional.
right. And that's not a healthy way to be. So, with that being said, when you think about you ended up getting your bachelor's and your master's and GED, you had some
Yes.
folks who were there for you along the way, and then you relapsed. Talk about that.
Well, I relapsed because I continue, like sometimes, I don't know if you ever heard it. Sometimes they said, you pick a same guy, you think it's a different guy, but it's the same guy, different body. And
Mm-hmm.
I was with someone else that was using. And again, I'm still stuck in my emotions about wanting to be
So, so,
loved.
so, Emoja, I gotta ask you one thing.
But
What were you thinking?
that's what I came to. But now today, I realize more about how to select somebody who
Uh-huh.
you want in your life and your
Mhm.
friends, and also a little more control about whether, no matter what someone else is doing, it doesn't mean you have to do it. But when you're in search for approval, when you're in search for somebody to love you, when you're in search for, I need protection, and those are the things that's rolling in your mind,
Mhm.
those are the things that motivate you, but those are the things that got you into all kinds of, you know, situations that you should not be in. And it takes a while for you to learn, wait a minute, why are you with this guy? He does the same thing. And that's what different guys, same situation.
You talked about love and emotional connection. How are you loving yourself now?
Today, I'm loving myself because I'm more into affirmations. I grew up Christianity and prayers and stuff, and it did what it did for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said about the past, nothing that came before is to be tossed away, because everything that came helped to build me and mold me as to who I am. So I do accept what I was brought up with. But today, my thoughts go a little different. I don't feel like I want to pray and beg. To me, prayer is begging. To me, I feel like I'm a part of the universe. I am goddess. I am a goddess because I recognize how I am God. The whole thing is God, and it's expressed through me. So therefore, I have the power. Now that I know my power of thought and words, I can speak into existence what it is that I want. But I started to learn, as I learned about me and my connection to the all, I started to see things differently, learn and change the way I talk, the way I relate, and all of that, so that my relationships now is on a whole different level. I no longer feel like I can possess somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I no longer feel that without that person, my world doesn't exist. I no longer feel that if you don't approve of me, I'm worthless. There's a lot of things that have changed in the way I see myself and how I think. And of course, I try to do better with my eating. I've learned a lot. You're not eating right. If you don't take care of your biological self, it makes it hard for you to take care of your mental self as well as your spiritual self. So there's different levels of mastery that we all need to come up with. It's a developmental stage. And now that I know it, I do better for myself.
You write about coming to Syracuse and getting connected to a church and those God's Way, Church of Jesus, and all of that.
Reverend Ellis, do you remember Reverend Ellis?
Oh, I do. I remember Reverend Ellis, who started the church. He was at an apostolic for a minute, and it's funny because you said you came to Syracuse because you heard that this was the place to come to get clean.
Place to come. Yes.
Yeah.
That was a rumor, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. But did you?
But that's what you heard.
So did you actually? I mean, there was a program here, so you actually came here for a program, right?
Yeah, I came. I was in the Lydia House. I also went to the rescue mission, and of course, I went to the rooms, and I met a slew of people. And each one of those situations was a village for me. That's what I come to realize.
And it's interesting because you're a person about relationships, and you, even through all of the trauma, you were all about building relationships and making connections. One of the two things, I have two more things for you here. First thing I wanted to ask you, you write at times that there were white folk who helped you along the way, and you write as if you were surprised by that. Why did you write it in that way?
Well, because my story was not only for me and my family, in particular, but like I said, there are people who have been abused. And again, like you said, there's so many ways of being abused that a lot of us don't think of it as abuse. And you got elder abuse, you got children abuse, you got, spouse, it's all kinds of stuff. And my story carries a little bit of all of it. And so I wanted to reach out to as many people as I could to let them know that even though they went through that or going through that, like I said, it doesn't stop there. That doesn't mean that's the end of your journey, nor does that mean it's the end of your life. So it's important for me to give back. And even more so today, I understand how more important it is to give, because in giving, the universe gives you back. And maybe that's why I survived, because I always gave.
Well, but I'm saying you specifically talked about there were white folk who are Caucasian.
Oh, those, okay.
Yeah, you talked about that. And I said, my question was, you seem surprised to receive help and support from them, or you wanted to acknowledge the help and support you gave from them. Was that because you grew up in a segregated South and wasn't expecting that, or was surprised? Why did you make a point to say something about that? Yeah, to acknowledge that.
The reason I really said it was because I am not prejudiced in spite of all of what I lived through. And I don't carry hate in me, because if I carry it, I have to get it back. And there is so many people in my journey and all those climbing and falling that I did that came from Caucasian people. So everybody is not to be considered mean, hateful, racist, or any of those things. You can find love, support, and help from any people, any person. And I needed to make sure, because my book was to be, generated for my diaspora. But I wanted people to know that don't get it twisted. There were white folks or Caucasian people that did major things for me to continue that journey, and it's not to be, dismissed.
What role do you think forgiveness plays in or played in your healing journey?
Um, I think I want to say my my desire to just know more about me as a Black woman, African woman, African, American, African, I just want to know about me. And we got so many stories and lies and stuff that the more I learn about me, it just seems that the more I open up. And the more I open up, I have an open mind to everyone. I want to help people. Everybody's connected to each other. We cannot, you cannot think that the tree or the animal or the another person, different color, is not connected to you. We're all connected. And once you give in love, I think you're helping to create the reality that you want to be in your circle, and it does make the world better. So I'm getting, and I'm moving more
So you're
into
not there yet?
spiritual.
So you're not there yet? You're not ready to
No, it's a
forgive?
climb. It's a
Okay.
climb.
Mm-hmm.
And it's much better than it was.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, some people that knew me with a different mindset may not even understand this new mindset. But I would say to those people, it's an evolution and it's levels of growth. And each one of the levels that we deal with, there's several more levels.
Right.
So just because I think this today, I'm not saying 10 years from now, I'm thinking the same way. That's where I am today. I want to be closer to the highest part of me, which I realize is the spiritual part of me. My physical is necessary to be on this plane, but my spiritual is what's operating through that physical. So and I realize that.
So how do you suggest women, who are in relationships like yours or have made choices like you have, not honoring your own truth, but the truth of somebody else, which is not a good thing for you. How do you suggest, encourage that they transition out of those relationships?
Well, the biggest part is having to be honest to yourself. The only way you can, you know what, I'm gonna say this.
Say it, be straight up with it.
No, this is easy, but it's hard to. I consider myself a stingy person with all that I do. I'm stingy because I grew up as an only child. And everything that I wanted, was right there. And learning to share was a bit of a challenge for me because I'm so used to having all of what I want. And I'll give you, say if you got a piece of cake, I might pinch off a little piece here rather than break it in half and give you, stingy. I'm not stingy anymore, but I realized that I was. And I understood that the more share I am able to share and give, I felt better. I felt like now when I drive by the guys are standing and the women are standing at the corners and I reach in my thing and throw $2 out or change whatever's available. I'm getting ready to drive up there and I'm digging for the change because I'm going to give. And I feel good. It's a good feeling to give. And so I've sort of overcome that feeling, although that's a strange feeling because I do so much for others in another way. But on that level, so I had to say that to myself. You're stingy. You're stingy. And once I admitted that and I didn't want to be stingy, then I had to start doing things to oppose that, which means somebody asked me, can I ask here? I had to learn how to give more without wanting to pull back. And that's just a small example. Once you identify whatever it is that bothers you don't like about yourself, and you wish you could change, you can. You really can. You just have to decide to do that. And when you do that, the more you start to show love for yourself, then you'll probably not let somebody else do to you what you wouldn't do to yourself.
Mhm.
Because what people do is what you allow to do. And so then I had to learn to set boundaries. Just because somebody say I'm cute, oh, I like you, the cat calls and what have you. And I got to turn over and bounce for that. Learn just because somebody say what they say or do what they do doesn't have to be a trigger for me to behave and act in a certain way. But you don't do that until you learn how to love yourself enough to
Mhm.
walk away and not feel scared that you're going to lose a friend or a person, or
Mhm.
a lot of things keep you there because you're trying to get approval. When you
Right.
decide you don't need approval, then you're starting on your way to set your boundaries, love yourself, and say no when you have to.
What was I thinking? That's the
What
name of
was I thinking?
Emotion
Control your
Born.
mind,
Yeah.
control your world.
Yeah. And
George, I thank you so much for allowing me to do this. George, you have been there all through that journey in Syracuse. You're one of those people, the Black history stories we do and the little Black museum over there, Southwest, everything, Kwanzaa. You've been in that book with me all along. And it's people like you that help me to pull up out of that hole and find my real self. And I love myself today.
we're glad that you do. The book is called What Was I Thinking? Umoja, how do people get a hold of the book?
It's on Amazon, but this Wednesday I'm going to be over to Guest House, which is Peace Incorporated agency, and I'm going to do a book signing from 12
Well,
noon
by
to
the
3 p.m.
by the
Black
time
History.
by the time people see
Hmm.
this, that will already happen. But we'll promote that you were there and that
Oh,
people can get
okay, doesn't
it.
matter. I put it up. I posted it anyway.
So good.
But yeah, that's it. Amazon.com is the key place. But I do get a couple of copies myself for the local people. They don't have to worry about shipping. They can get in touch with me through my email address that you can definitely share. And I can do that.
Very good. Umoja Vaughn, good luck with the book. Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your journey. And
Yes,
we know that this story will resonate with a lot of people. We really
a lot of
appreciate you
people.
coming on. And
Thank you so
are you
very
back
much.
in the
I love
queues for a
you.
minute? Or what's the story?
I'm back. I'm here. I'm
All
here. I
right.
came back the 7th of February, actually.
All right.
Yes,
All
but
right.
I'm back and I'm gonna be doing whatever. Look, I'm an older woman now. You
Okay.
look, all that fire is gone, but
listen, listen. What I remember Laura Mae Hawkins Turner used to say, just because the snow is on the roof don't mean that there's no fire in the furnace. So we
that's
know
right. Okay.
you got
Yeah,
a little bit left. George
yeah, I'm
Patrick,
doing something. I think as long as I'm here, I'm gonna try to stay on purpose and stay on my path because obviously this is where I'm supposed to be. So again, thank you so very much. I love my family. I love my people, the depth of my heart. I really, really do.
inspiration for the nation.
Thank you.